What celebrity behaved like a complete jerk to you in public? Wayne Brady screamed at my sister for taking his picture in Vegas. She wasn't taking his picture, he just walked into the shot. He freaked out, screaming that he wanted her to show him that she was deleting it. She was trying to explain that she didn't even know he was there, and showed him the picture that only had a sliver of him in it when she looked through the shots. He continued to berate her about not respecting his privacy in the middle of the Vegas Strip. She was in tears, apologizing for doing nothing wrong, and he never acknowledged he was in the wrong and continued to badmouth her as he stormed away. Can't watch him anymore. Mark Wahlberg did an appearance at his brother's restaurant. He refused to take pictures with anyone taller than him. Now, this I can believe. Met Tiger Woods when I was 15. He slapped my hat out of my hand. A different golfer whom I didn't know ran up, picked up my hat, and asked if his signature would be okay. I agreed, but I don't know who he was or what his name was, but my grandpa was pleased upon seeing it. Pauly Shore. It was mid-90s in New York City, and my wife and I were at a very popular Asian restaurant with a huge wait time. He walks in with an entourage and tries to worm his way ahead of everyone else. He tried to play the "don't you know who I am" card. Hostess was having none of it, said, "Don't know, don't care, you'll wait." They left in a huff. I know this won't come as a surprise, but Steven Seagal used to frequent a restaurant I worked at. Guy was a colossal piece of crap. He treated his wonderful family like crap, and it was obvious he was cheating on his wonderful wife with the Asian nanny. This fricking moron would come into a 10-table restaurant, all 6'5" and 300 pounds of him, wearing a golden kimono in the South, and would wonder why people were looking at him. So he made us take the entry partition down and put it around his table. He was an absolute trash human being. Also met Peyton Manning one night after the Super Bowl he lost to the Saints. This was at an ultra-high-end golf course, and we were not allowed to act like we recognized celebrities, which was more awkward than anything. Anyway, he walked up and ordered a beer and introduced himself, but I was already turning to get the beer as he stuck out his hand to shake my hand and tell me who he was. As if I didn't know who Peyton Manning was in the grounds when I saw his forehead pull into the parking lot. So I blew off Peyton Manning for a handshake. How many of you losers can say that? Great frickin' guy, though. Well, the narrator thought that maybe the author was drawing too many conclusions about Steven Seagal, but after a quick Google I can see that he is, if anything, painting him as less of a D-bag than the man himself often behaved as in public. Didn't happen to me, but I had a physics teacher in high school who sat next to Bill Nye on a plane once. Apparently, he was super unpleasant to be around. Every time this thread comes up, James Corden ends up taking it over. "Hey James, you won't remember me, but me and my friends sat at a table next to you and Harry Styles and some others in Manchurian Legends in London's Chinatown about 6 years ago. We didn't bother you, but you were a massively entitled C-word who yelled and treated the waitstaff like crap. And when one of my party politely suggested you calm down, you got really aggressive and threatening, in a chubby way like a boozy panda. So my question is this: why did Harry seem so cool while you were such a massive, throbbing eggplant?" This is from his AMA thread, by the way, literally hundreds of posts like this from ex-fans, staff, and other actors. I haven't met a rude celebrity yet, but Stanley's security at Calgary Comic-Con a few years back was fricking brutal. The guy acted like he was a fricking mercenary. Stanley would sit in a chair and you'd come close to him to get your photo op, and Stan let me be pretty well arm-to-arm close, and his security guard yelled at me and asked Stan if he authorized me to be that close. Even the photographer looked at the security guy like he was crazy. But at the same Comic-Con, meeting Norman Reedus, Stephen Yeun, and Robert Englund, Freddy Krueger, was amazing. They're all super awesome and tried to have a legitimate conversation with you. Steve Yeun even complimented my glasses. 10 out of 10, best con for me. I was the butthole in my store. I saw Don Cheadle at an airport and was thinking about Ocean's 11 and said to my friend, "Dude, it's Bernie Mac." And he looked back and said, "Nah, I'm the other black guy from Ocean's 11, but at least you liked the movie." Jared Leto hit on my girlfriend at the time and called me fat. His brother Shannon was super nice though. At least he didn't tattoo fat on your forehead. He was a total rude, aloof jerk, and his brother was super lovely, warm, and sweet. Jimmy Fallon. I liked his show, and one day while I was getting a tour at NBC Studios, he bumped into me and turned around and said sorry, and then flipped me off, and it's not like I got in his way. He walked into me from behind. David Cross is pretty miserable. He's from Atlanta and his sister runs a food truck in town. Her recipes were all named after David Cross or Arrested Development type stuff, so my wife and I, being fans of David, asked about it and she told us she was his sister. So for months we'd chat her up anytime we ordered food from her truck, and eventually David was in town. She invites us to come to the food truck to meet him, so we bring a poster from the early 2000s and are super pumped to meet him. We get there and she's very anxious and hesitant to introduce us. Weird, but okay. No, it's okay, I'll introduce you. She does, and he was incredibly dismissive and unpleasant. Never heard of anyone having a good interaction with him. Our best interaction was with Conan O'Brien. He was a total class act. Chatted him up in a bathroom line of all places and said my wife and I were huge fans. He said we should come on by the table to chat. I told him we didn't want to interrupt his dinner, but he insisted, then asked if he wanted pictures, and was super cool. I'll say on behalf of Cross that I listened to him on Andy Richter's 3 Questions, and he says he feels bad about being a jerk to his fans when he was younger. He admits actively being a jerk, but he also said he didn't really know how to talk to people at all. He said he'd get weird when people complimented him or said they liked something. I thought it was kind of good of him to admit he'd been a jerk in the past, instead of continuing to be a jerk and just thinking his fans are buttholes. Kurt Vonnegut. I had to get in touch with him frequently for work at a non-profit for several years. He was never once even vaguely polite. I tried to bum a cigarette off Kurt Vonnegut once, when he was guest professor at my old college. Before I could even say a word, he looked up and fricking growled at me. So naturally, I panicked and fled. At the end of the year, the school paper did an interview with him and he was like, for some reason, hardly anyone came to my office hours. Yeah, Kurt, it's because you growl at people. Bobby Flay. We paid hundreds of dollars to go to a fancy event he was participating in. Waited for a long time just to meet him and say hi, and he looked at us and walked away. He was a real jerk about it too. Bill Nye the Science Guy. I was on a field trip in middle school and our teacher saw him. She politely asked if he could say something to us or just say hi. We always watched him in science class. He told her to F off and basically berated her for bothering him and asking him to speak to a bunch of kids. I'm not sure if he was just having a bad day, but it was not the best experience as a child. Some narrator's insights halfway through the script. Bill Nye's name came up a lot in this story grouping, which may be upsetting to some people, but there it is. Apparently, just don't talk to him if you see him in public. I won't do any more of his stories unless they're particularly juicy. Me and my sister saw Alec Baldwin, Tina Fey, and Salma Hayek on the street when we were eating lunch. They were just coming out of a car, about to go into some building next to us. We had no idea why they were together, but in retrospect, it was definitely because they were filming 30 Rock together. My sister said, "Oh my god, is that Tina Fey?" And Alec Baldwin turned around and went right in her face and said, "Don't freaking say that. Don't speak to us. Why would you say something like that? You can't speak to us, not now." But it didn't really end there. He yelled again at us outside the building, saying, "Don't look over here. Turn around and eat your food. F off." He sounded genuinely furious at us, almost like he wanted us to yell back and start something with him. Honestly, my sister was on the verge of tears. It was horribly embarrassing. Everyone knows now that Alec Baldwin has a history of screaming at people, but at the time we had no idea. Don't get me wrong, my sister shouldn't have yelled at Tina Fey like that, but the way Alec snapped was straight up scary, like he was about to physically attack her. Salma Hayek and some other lady who I didn't recognize came over and apologized to us. She asked if we wanted her to go and get Tina and get her autograph because apparently Tina felt bad, but we said no. She then talked to us about the food we were eating, which was Mexican food, and we ended up having a brief conversation about New York's lack of quality Mexican food. She was incredibly charismatic and sweet. My dad has been a radio personality for over 30 years and worked in country music for over half of that time. He gets to meet celebrities semi-regularly. Apparently Keith Urban was really nice, Carrie Underwood was kind of mediocre because he caught her right after her performance and she was tired, but Kenny Chesney puts the D in D-bag. Direct quote from my dad. Kenny promised to sign some pictures, t-shirts, etc. for a couple of kids who won a game through the radio. Kenny instead took a bunch of groupies into one of the back rooms of the studio with a bottle of whiskey and locked the door. When my dad tried to get him to open the door and fulfill his end of the deal, he called the cops on my dad and he was lucky enough to get a cop who was a good acquaintance. Cops said there wasn't much he could do other than make Kenny leave. So that's what he did. Kids never got their stuff signed, so my dad gave them some coupons for free pizza. He said that after a few years, other radio hosts told him they had similar encounters with Kenny. I've had the perfect combination of bad star, good star. It was at Dragon Con, maybe 2005. I'm going through the big autograph room waiting to get David Carradine's autograph. He looked so mad. He didn't say a word as I told him how much I enjoyed his work. Okay, I get it. Maybe he was having a bad day. Next to Mr. Carradine was Mark Singer, star of Beastmaster, V, among other things. Mr. Singer is smiling, talking to people as they go by. He looks genuinely happy to be there. Suddenly, a woman behind me stumbled and dropped a huge stack of materials she wanted autographed. Mr. Carradine looked down on her like she was a bug. Mark Singer jumped over his table and started helping the woman pick up her things. Didn't hesitate one moment, just started helping. That's when I decided if I ever became famous, I was going to try and be like Mark Singer, not David Carradine. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I sat next to Rosario Dawson on a flight from LA to Austin while she was shooting Death Proof. I didn't recognize her and she kept trying to strike up conversations while I was studying for a Cal 2 final. I was a butthole to her until it came out that she was Rosario Dawson. Then we had a very pleasant conversation. I regret meeting her because I am the jerk. Prince Andrew. Spent a lot of time around him 10 years ago, working at private school events he attended. The guy was a total prick. Maybe he would have been nicer to you if you were younger. I met Shane Dawson at a restaurant I used to work at. He used to come in a few times a year with his fiancée and in-laws. He's a prick. None of my servers liked him or wanted to serve his family, and I damn near had to fight some little girls off the property because they wouldn't leave without seeing him. I sat near him at Denny's in Santa Monica around midnight once. Must have been back when he had longer hair, and I don't think he was dating Ryland yet, but I'd already stopped watching years prior. He was alone with his laptop, didn't even realize until my boyfriend pointed him out, so I looked behind and indeed it was Shanae. Can't remember a single time he thanked our server, although while we were there she was just refilling his coffee. Apparently some people don't feel the need to thank their servers every single time they visit their table. Afterwards I realized he'd been live tweeting about the other couple a few booths down from us who were seated closer to him. We narrowly avoided him talking crap about us to thousands of people. My gosh. Met Dennis Leary. Butthole. Figures. Mike Rowe was super cool though. Reggie Jackson. He was a childhood idol of mine. I got the opportunity to get a photo with him at some booth at a trade show called Internet World. Years ago during the .com boom. No one was in line to get pictures with him, so I walked up to get a photo while he was apparently trying to get the girls in the next booth over to sleep with him. He acted all bugged that I asked for a photo, even though that's what he was hired for, and rolled his eyes. I guess he thought I was crimping his style just by showing up in line to get a picture. I tossed the picture in the trash once I got it. Later that day, I got a ball signed by Steve Garvey, who was super nice. He replaced Reggie Jackson as my hero that night. Ace Frehley of Kiss. It was at a rock and roll, TV, movie memorabilia convention in the mid-90s, shortly before the Kiss reunion, and he clearly didn't want to be there. He didn't talk to fans, didn't say hi, heck, he didn't even look at you when you came to his table. He just signed whatever you placed in front of him, and you were hustled away afterwards. On the other hand, Adam Batman West was at the next signing table and he was totally cool guy. Shook hands, chatted with everyone, signed whatever we wanted, posed for pictures, etc. Meeting him more than made up for Ace's surly, hungover D-bag act. A famous soap opera star in my country, he came into the Dairy Queen I was working at. I didn't know who he was and my co-worker started hyperventilating and went into the back. The guy was rude and when I handed him his cone he said, "Is that all?" Like he expected extra because he was famous. Yeah dude, if you order one scoop, you get one scoop. Didn't find out he was famous until he left and my co-worker came back to the front. "Sir, this is a Dairy Queen, not a drama queen." I've forgiven this particular author for not giving us a name purely on the basis of that clapback added by the subsequent comment. Thank you, oh sassy one. Diana Ross. I worked in a health club in a hotel across the street from a stadium when I was young. She came in, looked at the pool, which was a really decent lap pool, and said, "My bathtub is bigger than this." I replied, "Go back to your bathtub then." She wanted me fired instantly. HR told me to go home for 2 days because if they fired everyone she wanted fired, the hotel wouldn't have any staff. I met James Brown back in the 80s when I lived in Vale. The man was dissatisfied with everything and generally drunk. Absolute flip side was meeting Mr. Rogers when I was at Pitt. That man was the real deal. I wouldn't say disappointing as I was never eager to meet him, but Drake. Drake was just unprofessional and egotistical when I worked with him both times. This was before he got big, first award show type level. He's told me to F off directly, and I watched his mum calm him down from a tantrum. My fiancé is a chef at a pretty prominent boutique hotel restaurant in Philly. He says the two worst guests were Ariana Grande, made not one but two servers cry, and the Rolling Stones. The best guests were Sylvester Stallone, Pink, Lady Gaga, and Guy Fieri. Anyone from Pittsburgh can tell you that Ben Roethlisberger is a horrible person. I have a friend who owns a bar on the south side, and he has, on multiple occasions, just walked into the bar and said, "My friends and I are drinking for free tonight." He also told Arnold Palmer's grandson that he doesn't sign autographs if he's not getting paid to do so. Legend has it that he earned a pretty nasty verbal beatdown from Palmer, and apparently he's banned from his golf course. Arnold Palmer, on the other hand, was an incredibly nice guy. Bill Cosby, even before all his real horrible stuff got publicly known, he came to a restaurant in DC where I was a hostess. I came to get him for his table and he said, "Do you not need a college degree for this job?" No, man, have you never met a server before? I was sitting undressed in a Korean day spa steam room when a guy who looked just like Lawrence Fishburne walked in and sat down across from me. I was there with two friends and we were talking, and you could tell we were all like, could that really be Morpheus? We just kept talking and he was listening to whatever story we were reminiscing about, and then he smiled at something we said and we saw the tooth gap. We all played it cool though and didn't say anything until after he left. 10 out of 10, a nice guy to hang out undressed with. The lead singer of Smash Mouth showed me a picture of him sticking a beer bottle into a Brazilian woman. Ruined Astro Lounge for me. I met Wayne Gretzky once. Guy's a bit of a chode, to be honest. I caught him on a bad day. We all get like that. His father, rest in peace, was so much cooler than he was. On the flip side, my brother met Gord Downey, also rest in peace, at a get-together. He was with his girlfriend and her family at one of her parents' friends' place. They were all sitting, chatting, having a good time. Out of nowhere, Gord walks in like it's nothing. Apparently the owners of the house were friends with Gord. My brother, being a huge Tragically Hip fan, was internally freaking out, but he kept cool on the outside so as to not bother this guy. He talked with him for a while about sports and things like that. Towards the end of the night when my brother was getting ready to leave, Gord stopped him and shook his hand while saying, "Thank you for pretending not to know who I am." Deion Sanders. I interviewed him at an NFL military event like 8 or 9 years ago, and he was a prick the whole time. He threw my lav mic on the ground when he was done instead of placing it in my outstretched hand. I was also active duty military at the time, and the event was on a ship. Hey Sanders, if you hear this, F you, dude. F you. Yeah, but he was also capable of being a jerk and throwing mics to the ground at MLB events. You gotta respect that kind of versatility. This guy expected my seat on a plane. He was our local news anchor. Actually said, "I may look familiar." I said, "You're a merchant banker?" Justin Timberlake. This was when I was working a drive-thru at Burger King around 2002 to 2003 or so. He came up at the drive-thru with someone else driving, but he was sticking his head out like, "Hey, hey, hey!" at us. I didn't really recognize him, but he asked if we knew who he was. I said no, but my coworker said yes. Then he looked at me like, "You don't know?" and was just really confused. My coworker said it was Justin Timberlake and he said, "Yeah, hello, come on man." Then he just sort of had small talk. He asked us how work was, how our day was. But here's the thing. The entire time he's leaning all the way over the driver, who was clearly horribly uncomfortable and a bit crushed by him leaning over on him. He asked if I was from the Middle East and I said no. He clearly didn't listen and said, "Yeah, that sucks. Sorry about the whole Afghanistan thing." He asked if we wanted his autograph. We said sure. He wrote it down and gave it to us. He then said bye and left. It was all in all a really funny experience, and I try not to let it influence my view of him because he was clearly on something, but he just came off like a big goofy attention-loving silly Billy the entire time. Met Morgan Freeman at a Bed Bath & Beyond. He was shopping for a teapot on a lower shelf and stood up right when I almost walked into him, and I was like, "Wow, you look just like Morgan Freeman." And he said without skipping a beat, "If I was Morgan Freeman, wouldn't I be in Hollywood or something?" And the voice made me now like 99.9% certain it was him. And I was like, "I guess you would. Enjoy your time here." I don't regret meeting him, and I don't think he was being a jerk. I just thought it was so Morgan Freeman of him to have a line like that to make you wonder if you met Morgan Freeman or just a guy that likes to act like a character in a bunch of his movies. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out easymode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.